Hey everybody, Dawn Kendrick here with some good news. The good news is that you're only going to hear good news here. I am a repurposed news reporter, and I am finally doing the stories that have been burning in my heart for so long. They're stories that uplift, encourage, and inspire, and they are real, and they're raw, and they're vulnerable. They're the good stuff stories, and we see it over and over again that through it all, through the middle of our biggest challenges, together we can, together we will. Let's go see the good and be the good. On your mark, get set, let's go. Hey, good stuff family. Good morning. Welcome to another Friday where we chat out the things that have been on our hearts and our minds throughout the week, and where we talk about our series that we run every Monday. We drop stories of people who are uplifting, encouraging, and inspiring. And the series that we're doing now, season 2, is called God at Work. And we named it in honor of my mama, who passed away on February 23rd. And those were the first words at the eulogy: God at work. If you knew our mama, you knew those words. So I have been so encouraged the last few days, you guys, about all of these potential stories that are coming in. And so I wanted to talk about that today a little bit, just staying in the moment in the midst of all the chaos, staying in the moment where you can see clearly that God is at work. And to be able to talk this out with you all, if you weigh in on the comments, that's how we do this conversation on Fridays. Is a blessing. It's a blessing to come to this family, not by blood, but the family that we're growing, the Good Stuff Family Tree 2023. And if you don't know, I have moved from Cleveland after 22 years there to St. Louis, moved here to be closer to my mama and my family. And so still some, it's been, I think chaotic is the understatement almost, but beautiful chaos, if you know what I mean. And so things are still coming out of boxes. And today I am drinking out of a coffee mug. Cheers, by the way, if you're having your coffee. That says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Ecclesiastes 3:11. This is from my friend Carrie Sad, who's one of my go-to spiritual guru, good stuff to the bone sister friends. Carrie Sad. Again, how we met, divine design, through our Doreen Tusick. And I'm going to be talking about that family today. If you were with us last week, we prayed for Tim Tusick, who was going through surgery. But this is, see how it works? It's like connecting the dots. And I often say, if I had string and I could pull it from pin to pin of all the people who I've met throughout the years, it would make this beautiful tapestry. I almost feel like it would make a heart shape, because I know that God is at work. And the hardest times to remember it is when you're like, really, God, really? But we're going to talk today about some examples of how God is at work, even through the most challenging times. So tomorrow marks 2 years since a dynamo warrior named Colin Nemeth, 11-year-old Colin Nemeth, went to be with his best friend face to face when this world lost Colin Nemeth, but heaven gained. And in 11 years, he and his family did more to bring people to faith through their example than some of us will even do in a lifetime. And so I just put it out there that we can, the power of one, and we can start today. Again, I'm talking to myself, y'all, as well. So here, this is Colin Nemeth. We went to his house to do some interviews and talk to his family. I want to say maybe 3 weeks before he ended up going to heaven. And I just, I mean, that speaks volumes. There he is. And he had this massive crew behind him, mostly kind of based out of St. Ambrose Church. You could feel the spirit in that church. And he had a brain tumor, and he knew, you guys, he knew the first 2 times this was a type of aggressive pediatric brain tumor that is guaranteed to come back. The first time he said, "No, I think, you know what? Jesus has got this." This is how the parents tell it. And lo and behold, they went in for the scans and there was no tumor following. And the doctors were like, "Okay." At first, when he said, "I got this, Jesus got this." All right, that we like optimism. But then there it was, gone. And it was the second time as well. Then the third time he said, "I think Jesus needs me with him. I think I'm supposed to be with him." And they this community send him off in, like, it was 3 hours to get up to the parents at the funeral to give him a hug. Here he is, that trademark smile, and, when you that's the first thing you see when you walk up to the door of the Nemeth home. It is so full of love, like real, resilient love in the face of grief and loss, resilient love. Because they'll tell you, and their testimony is because they're rooted in faith. They're rooted in the plan that God has for them that's bigger than anything we could understand here. And they bask in, for lack of a better phrase, the peace that surpasses all understanding. Now, these coming up on these anniversaries, my heart so feels for them. But I'm just so grateful for this gift of Colin that they gave the world. And so I think I'm just gonna sit on this picture here for a second. Oh, again, if you're listening in podcast mode, we do these on Friday, more of a podcast format, but it is also available video stream that you can get from the goodstufffamily.com. You can see these pictures that we're referring to if you have time to go there. And I might ask, if you're watching on YouTube, if you could hit subscribe, and if anywhere else, share, like, follow, anything you could do to help us grow this Good Stuff family tree. I'd be so grateful. So if I could just read you guys, and good morning, by the way, if you're just clicking in, I see some more people weighing in on the comments. Kellyanne and Bob, good morning. I'm going to read to you guys right now, if I could, the post that I made a year ago tribute to Colin, and see, just this morning as I was kind of praying into this to see if maybe it could feed your all souls as well, as we say today. We have today. It's right here. We have this gift of today. We don't have the spotlight to see even as far as tomorrow, but we do have today. And so when I tell you about this awesome 11-year-old, so no matter what age you are, listen to what he did at 11 years old. This is what I wrote. There were tears. It was a funeral, after all, for an 11-year-old. A funeral for an 11-year-old. But there was also candy, lots of it, in church. That's how Colin Nemeth wanted it. Station after well thought out station of all of Colin's favorites, like Skittles, of course. The bottomless bowl of Swedish fish sat at the display with Colin's fishing pole and all the pictures of him reeling them in. It turns out Colin Nemeth was a fisher of men and more. Matthew 4:19. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Colin had reeled us all into a closer relationship with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The cancer warrior who was a force to be reckoned with in life and behind any Nerf air gun, stared death in the face with unflappable faith that made us all want to be like him. Jesus is Colin Nemeth's friend. That's how he talked to him. And what were clearly more conversations than they were prayers, Colin Nemeth found the peace that surpasses all understanding. And we waited something like 3 hours to wind our way through a seemingly endless line at St. Ambrose Parish Church to get up to that casket that should never have to be built that small. We would have waited 3 days to hug Colin's mom and dad and his siblings like we never wanted to let them go. "Thank you for making Colin Nemeth," I wanted to tell them. A year later, now 2 years later, I am still learning from the family that gave the world Colin Nemeth. I see the post below from his mom, and I understand again why Colin had faith that could move a mountain. This is legacy that will outlive all of us. An 11-year-old who led more people than we can count to strengthen our faith or to start a relationship with the God of the universe, who is also 11-year-old Colin Nemeth's friend. Now they are forever friends, face to face. And the world here, as we know it, will never be the same for having known a warrior for 11 short years. I have the hashtag be a Colin. Maybe we could use that hashtag the next couple days in our posts that we make, our positive posts, and remind this awesome family that we stand in solidarity in their loss, but in celebration of the example that they set. So, as we say, God weaves, now watch him work. So here I looked at some of these other pictures from that day when we went to see Colin. Also, one of my favorite people in all the entire world came, Timmy Tusick Sr. Colin loves Timmy Tusick, excuse me, Jr., Timmy Tusick Jr. We're going to talk about Senior in a bit because we just prayed for him last week. And Timmy Jr. here, Timmy Tusick, beat cancer a year early. He had an aggressive form of cancer. The doctors couldn't even believe when he finally came in what great shape he was in. But Colin drew a lot of his strength from the example that Timmy Tusick set. Look at him goofing off here. He's trying to like one up him, like he squeezed his nose, and Timmy's like, "Well, can you do this?" And look, that was love. Like honestly, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, y'all, look at that. 2 warriors, 2 cancer warriors, one God called home at 11, and one who is God still working through, the whole Tusick family. Because in a really God, really moment, Timmy Tusick's dad, Tim Tusick Sr., who we love, also warrioring through a very serious cancer. And he had 2 surgeries, the second of which was last week. If you remember, we prayed into it. Don't you know he is home and doing exceedingly well beyond what doctors could have even expected. Hallelujah. I'm just like, praise God. We don't know. We don't know the plans he has for us. But what we do know is how people show up. People show up when we open our hearts and allow God to weave. I know of all the things I don't know, I know this to be true. And here is a little parade they did for Colin. I believe it was the day or 2 days maybe before he passed. You guys, it was this endless stream of cars. That I mean, this is just one section of an intersection outside of the neighborhood where he lives. What more could we ask for 11 years on earth here, this side of heaven, for 20 years, for 100 years? This is it. This is it. To have left a legacy that says it's not about us. It's not about us. It's bigger than cancer. It's bigger than all the really God, really questions. So look how these people rose up for him. Just bask in this picture. Again, thegoodstufffamily.com. This is a mosaic of a tiny, tiny, itty bitty sampling of the people who showed up to say to Colin, while he was here, this side of heaven, we love you. We see you. We see you leading by faith. You're 11 years old and you're teaching us all how to do it, basically. So I want to start today with that. We remember the Nemeth family in our prayers again for the peace that surpasses all understanding. But to today, and as we keep going forward, to remember that face right there, y'all. That face. That is the peace of God on Colin Nemeth's face right there. And Colin's crew. I love that it has those words right there because it is about community. So That was a fitting intro today for, I wanted to share, if I could, some notes that I had taken. Bob Goff, as you know, I say it ad nauseum. He's my friend and mentor who doesn't know it yet. I take so much guidance and counsel and inspiration from him, and he just leads genuinely. Like, I don't even think he scripts anything when he does these interviews with people. It's part of his language, this uplifting and encouraging mojo that he has, and it's practical things. And he says, you know what? You stand on faith like he does, like we do. Fantastic. But also, if you're listening and you don't, we're glad to have you. We want to hear your stories, and that's how we run the Good Stuff family as well. People who are uplifting, encouraging, and inspiring. And for us, prayer and faith is important. So Bob Goff interviewed Christy Nockels. Weigh in if in the comments, would you? She's a singer and a speaker. She has her own podcast now. And I don't often listen to his podcast right away. When the notice pops up, who has time? But I did this time. And I'm so glad I did, because I really want to bring you some of these notes that I wrote. Christy Nockels was talking about transitions and how they can be very scary. She was going small. She was coming home to Franklin, Tennessee with her family instead of on the big stage touring all these music concerts that she was doing in her faith ministry. But she said, and these are quotes, her desires had shifted. And she said, pay attention when that desire sticks around. God, what do I need to follow that? Is that speaking to any of you right now, that your desires feel like they're shifted, but all the excuses get in the way? Myself included. That's my story. She said she went from corporate worship to more small and hidden, from Atlanta to Franklin, Tennessee, where no one knew us, she said. But it was good for our family to not be on the platform, the big stage. And I'm listening to this thinking, it is good for this repurposed reporter to not be on the platform that is and was my entire life and was a gift of broadcast news. But it's important now for me to not be on that platform. It just is. It spoke to me. But in the audience, she said, instead. So not a family who was known for something in that place. I was known as a reporter, but we were showing up, she said, as a family, really leaning on each other and God in that season. That's what we are. We are that Good Stuff family that leans on each other and God in the seasons of our lives. Important part of transitions, she said, that is you've got to have your people around you. Is she speaking our language or what, you guys? People whose voices you trust. Those, like Bob says, the people who are adjacent to the hopes and dreams and the things you're trying to accomplish, stay aligned with them. Voices you trust. And those voices have also been courageous through the transitions themselves. And we learn from each other, and we learn from the vulnerability of the stories that we tell. Always really knowing God is leading you. I wrote that in capital letters. Again, these are Christy Nockels' words in an interview with Bob Goff, because there is that moment when you unpack all of the boxes, set up the house, and you start walking in a new direction. You guys, she said, where you unpack all of the boxes. What did I say at the beginning of this? That I'm drinking out of a coffee mug that just surfaced out of a box yesterday from Carrie Sad. It just surfaced. And she said, unpack all of the boxes, and you set up the house, and you start walking in a new direction, and you start thinking, this doesn't really feel like what I thought it was going to be. I didn't think it doesn't feel like what I thought it was going to be. I came here to be closer to my mama. My mama has now gone to be with the Lord with Colin Nemeth. And the questions, and for me to have heard a podcast in this season, this literally day that I heard it, this day of my life, tell me that God doesn't speak to us through others. Our prayer is just to open our hearts so that we can hear, and open our eyes so that we can see. And I just had a thought, our Danielle Folk, who we love so much, who is the backbone in so many ways of what we do, um, she lives on the farm, in a farmhouse that she has restored with her family, and when we were out there, she told this fantastic story of all the families who've lived there, the Weir family throughout the years and all the history that she does. She looks back and finds all the stories of the family that lived in this house before her. And guess what? They would throw all their garbage and stuff out the back door. I don't imagine they had a garbage man like Donovan Laird pulling up, you know, at the end of the driveway back in the day. So a lot of stuff just kind of went out the back door. She said things have a tendency to rise to the top. They show up in the backyard. They come up eventually. A brooch that she found a woman, one of the Weir family members wearing in a picture, found that brooch in the backyard in its time when it rose up. The good stuff that she says Daniel Folk has a tendency to rise up at a time when you need to be reminded that God's timing is perfect. And it occurs to me that this this cup, you know, didn't come out of the box before now. It came up for a purpose. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Those are the words looking back at me right now, y'all. Ecclesiastes 3:11. So, continuing these notes, she said, "You've got to find God in that place where it does not feel like what I expected." You guys, what can you be vulnerable and honest with me in the comments and share some of the places that you've been that you stopped and said, "Wait, I thought I was following you. It does not feel at all like I expected." Danielle and her family moved into that house that promptly, um, there was like challenge after challenge after challenge. Her husband had to have back surgery, and I'm sure Danielle's listening in. It says, "Good morning from the middle," right? Danielle, it was, "Oh my gosh, God, I don't feel like this is what I expected." We just wanted to get rooted in the good stuff out in the middle, but look at the story that they have. Look at the testimony. So again, Christy Knuckles saying, "Gotta find God in that place where it doesn't feel like we expected." But God can show up in ways we don't expect. She shows up in those moments. And it was those things, she says, in those times that really comforted and connected her to him in those times. Who can relate? Can you relate? Yes, Danielle saying it was a reeling time. 6 years to really see all that God was moving. Yes, yes. And so you have that affirmation and you keep taking the next best step. And Danielle has what is I think it's like a ministry, and the following, the people who are inspired by the courage that she took to follow this knocking on her heart to move her family to the middle. I had that knocking on my heart, y'all, that whole last year in broadcast news. My heart was going, "Gosh, I wanna tell these stories. I know you put them on my heart," but my head was going, you gotta keep your nose to the grindstone. This is the only thing you've ever done." All of these things, and we tend to sometimes ignore it. But when God moves us right out of our own way, I feel like, and the news director had a job to do, that new news director, and didn't renew my contract. Listen to what Christy Knuckles is speaking to me today, in these days, this moment right here, right now, this current season. God can show up in that place where it doesn't feel like what you expected. He can show up in ways we don't expect. That's where we are right now in growing this good stuff family tree and telling those stories of the best stuff that comes from the times that we simply ask, "Really, God, really?" And we wait, we keep taking the next best step, we be still and know that he's God until we can say, "Oh, really, God, really?" And that's what's happening. We're able to start telling these stories now more and more the way we wanted to. And so then at this point in the interview with Bob Goff and Christy Knuckles, Bob says it's about making peace with ambiguity in your life. Whoo, ambiguity. We don't want he said, "I don't wanna have it all played out." Ambu am ambiguous oh my gosh, ambiguous, sorry. Ambiguity and ambiguous work, those things, um, meant that you were going to be led away from who you were a lot of times, he said. So if you feel unsettled in a time of transition, Bob Goff again, he said, "Lean into the best version of ambiguity." Lean into the best version of ambiguity. And if faith guides your steps, like he said, I know that while I don't know, I trust God knows. Not going to try to build consensus with everybody else. Did that speak to you all right there, that sentence, you guys? Where he's not going to try to build consensus with everyone else about what I ought to do next because you you have well-intentioned people, he said, who aren't gonna get you. They're gonna get them they're good at getting themselves, but otherwise, he said he would still be the trial lawyer. Otherwise, I would still be the news reporter. Otherwise, Mindy Lee would still be. Otherwise, Danielle Folk would be. Otherwise, Kellyanne would be. Fill in the blanks of the people who follow this good stuff family. The beauty in the evolution of taking the next best step. And this is my favorite part of the interview. I have stars all around it. And Bob Goff says this often. So take notes if you're not driving. He said, take away everything you're known for. Let's take a minute. What are you known for? For me, I was known for reporting the news. It defined me. Dawn Kendrick, Channel 3 News, Dawn Kendrick, 19 Action News. And though I prayed and I had a relationship with God, I was wrapped up in the way people defined me. That was my job. That was my job. So take away everything you're known for, and whatever's left is who you are. Whoa. That's deep, isn't it, y'all? That's deep. Take away everything you're known for, and what's left is what you are. At the core, that's who you are. That's who God celebrates. So I said, take away Dawn the reporter, and what's left? Faith, family, like for Bob Goff, he said he's got faith. His family is important. Christy said she had her aha moment on the front porch when she wrote her most recent song, Home. She said, I hadn't been really in a place of being surrendered in my head. Surrendered, the Tusick family embracing that, especially in the last few weeks, a complete surrender. You take charge, God, you take charge. She said she hadn't been surrendered in her head. And she had a litany of physical ailments, she said. Her mom had cancer in 2021, who's doing better now, but all of these things, and she said, I was weary. That word weary, I feel that word. She thought about David, she said in the Psalms, the highest of the highs, the lowest of the lows, crying out in lament and sadness. And she said, I just want to be that honest with God from here on out. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing all of this? Why, God, do you need to take back an 11-year-old who was such a bright force to be reckoned with, such an ambassador for you? Why? We have so many questions. Big questions, she said. What do you want me to do was her biggest question that she cried out. And then she said, you know what, God, you've given me these gifts. I'm supposed to steward them. Well, in my heart of hearts, I heard this resounding word, she said. Her word was this. That's the word she heard. This is what I want you to do. Write these songs. Do these podcasts. She felt like friends telling her, maybe God wants you to use your voice in a different way. So now she's launching podcasts. She said, I'm God's kid. I'm his daughter. A sweet reminder of all the things I have called you to do. This is what she felt God saying. This sweet reminder that you're my kid, and I want you to come and talk to me on the porch whenever you want. I have stars by this too. Leave your voice to me, and it's okay. I can handle your questions. I can handle your anger, she felt like he was saying. Right now, your anger, and that you wait, and that you would wait to quiet everything. Come to me, wait on me, be still, and know that I'm God. Content and content, she pointed out. Take this away today too, you guys. Spelled the same way. Content and content. Content and content. Spelled the same way, but this content for her song that came from that moment of meditation on the porch is what made her content with things she didn't understand, right? When we start to get the, I get this now. Really, God, really. To be content with God and choosing in that moment to trust him as his kid, the way we trust parents. And Bob said, it's good to downshift sometimes. We have this black key for full speed, the red key for 25 miles an hour. And in his life right now, he's slowing down small groups of people, close groups of friends who he's aligned with, fire pit conversations. He said, get down to the few things that he's positive about. He certainly said about Jesus. That part he's positive about, his faith, his family, a couple of friends. I'm okay with the ambiguity, though, he said. He said, maybe you're in a job you're just not feeling anymore. You guys, that's what he said. And that was me. I was just so challenged in reconciling my heart with my head. He said, maybe you're hearing the leaves rustle because it's time for a transition from what you're doing. The leaves rustle, he said. This is the Good Stuff Family Tree 2023, you all. I promise God spoke through that podcast to me. There's no reason why I listened to it when I did. There's so much. I had to go back and take these notes. So if you're hearing the leaves rustle, y'all, because it's time for a transition from what you're doing, let this just settle into your hearts as well. And then he said, how about this? Half of my friends are afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. The other half are afraid they're going to keep it. Whoa. And he said, remember, you're just two words away from a new career, a new calling, and it's I quit. I'm not suggesting anyone quit their jobs, but to listen to the calling. It's so hard. It's so different often from a career. He said Goffs aren't quitters, but then he realized, yeah, we are quitters. We quit things that don't serve us. So to be able to quit things that aren't serving us, renewed permission to transition from the one thing everyone knows you for, your capabilities, to transition from that to this sense of calling. When someone calls, rings on the phone, it's more obvious, he said, ring, ring. It's much more subtle when God is moving, a shift in a season. It's more subtle when he's moving and there's a shift in your heart in a season. It's not going to ring, 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 but there are signs that something is changing. That's where I was. That's where I am. There's something positive at work here, you guys, something bigger than us in coming together in vulnerability and in a place of not really even knowing exactly how this Good Stuff Family movement is going to continue growing and taking off, but coming together in this season, feeling the leaves rustle, knowing that something is changing in each of our lives, to be able to sit back and take inventory of what that might be. And he said, look for those key people who really know you. I'll say it again, beyond the thing that you're known for, the people who saw me for more than a reporter, forever grateful for that. They all, unbeknownst to each other, started thinking the same thing, she said, about she needed to do this podcast. So she said it, Christy Knockel said, I think it's trusted voices, not just people on the periphery. Those were trusted people who didn't know that the others were saying the same thing. And those people really knew her and encouraged the transition. And to wrap this up, these notes, Bob said, knowing that you can smell the rain. You guys, if you listen regularly, I love the rain, right? He said, knowing you can smell the rain in the wind before the drops start hitting you. You just know there is something, a nudge in your life. So if it's the relationship you're in, maybe this is the nudge. He said it might be the next chapter, the thing that has lost its luster, something you done or are known for, and it just doesn't, what he said, blow your hair back anymore. Do that. Do the thing. You don't have to tell everyone what you've been doing with Jesus, but when you act courageously for you and you pivot, you release yourself from a job that's not you anymore. Do that, he says, and you will be honoring God. And he said, you guys go do this thing. Pick your courageous thing. And then he said, ready, go. Those are the words we've been saying. On your mark, get set, go. That is our mantra right now. Working hard to see the good and be the good. On your mark, get set, let's go. Kellyanne said, God will dig us up and replant us where he knows we can flourish and grow, and then plant us in the garden to be our part. It's so true. He totally planted Kelly and David Longhorn in my heart. I didn't see them coming. Again, how did I meet them? From Mindy Lee. How did I meet her? From the blessing of the job that was Channel 3. There it is. Everything works together for good. Romans 8:28. There it is. Oh man, I wanted to talk about High Five Day, but we've gone way, I have gone way over time. Let me join you tomorrow. But in the meantime, high five everyone you can, because yesterday was National High Five Day. I said we extend it. I want to extend it today. Anyone who knows me knows I extend it every day. I see Travis has logged in here. We were going to talk a little bit about it, but I'm going to save that, okay, for maybe later today or tomorrow. But high five, y'all. High five. We're doing this thing. We're doing this thing called life, and we're doing it together. And when we say together we can, together we will, it's a real thing. It's a real plan. And let me go out on this picture here before we close. Focus on where you want to go, not on what you fear. This is the picture that I found right in the middle of the Colin Nemeth pictures. I must have saved it because it reminded me of that family. Focus on where you want to go. Ultimately, for them, it's heaven, not on what you fear. The grief that we have down here sometimes in losing people who mean so much to us. So focus on where you want to go, not on what you fear, one step at a time. Look, we got this. We got this. Share your good stuff stories. Reach out to the other people. You don't ever know. There's Travi. Let's just throw that in. That's Travi doing a high five. So I'll leave you with that for a tease. That's his imitation of how I did high fives in college. So yeah, there you go. High five, everybody. High five. We got this. We got this. And I don't think it's an accident that this conversation that we're having today coincides with the 2-year mark of when Colin Nemeth went to be with his best friend. Ultimately, we have opportunity today to keep taking the next best step toward that end. I love you all. God bless. This has been a Grassroots Good Stuff family production. Big love and gratitude to our friend Carlos Jones, who is the talented voice and creator behind this music that sets the tone for these good stuff stories. Huge gratitude and love as well for our social media director. She is Danielle Folk and is consistently going above and beyond. Follow her at Farmhouse Storyteller. And to the producer, my Travi, the glue that holds together the moving parts of this God-inspired endeavor. TheGoodStuffFamily.com is where you'll find links for all the things we're doing, including how to be a sponsor of a story. So grateful for our faithful sponsors who have already made so much of what we do possible. And of course, big love and gratitude for you, the listeners, helping to grow this Good Stuff family tree 2023. Welcome to the family.